Good afternoon, and thank you for joining DFCS Discourse today. I want to first start off, as I usually do, by thanking you for all the work that you're doing. I am very optimistic at this point. I have just celebrated my one-year anniversary as director of the division, and it has been a very exciting period of time. We have had a lot of change. We've dealt with a lot of different issues. And so I want to thank you for the work that you've done, because we're seeing improvements throughout the organization. Child welfare, we've seen the number of cases that were overdue come down dramatically. In OFI, we're seeing all of the indicators regarding timeliness, error rates, all the things that we need to be seeing go in the right direction are headed there. So thank you for that. Today's discourse is going to be just a little bit different than what we have done in the past. I am actually going to be responding to questions from the field, and so these were sent in via this address. It's chat with the DFCS director at dhs.ga.gov, and that's all one word, chat with the DFCS director at dhs.ga.gov. So if you have questions as we go through or after we finish, I want you to be sure and submit those. We will continue to answer those as quickly as we can. I also, in addition to the ones that I've selected today, have a whole set of other questions that we won't be able to get to because of limited time today, but I will be personally answering those via email. So that is a great way for me to be able to understand what's going on in the field and to also be able to answer questions that you have as employees of the division. So we'll start off with the first question. And this one is, what is the real issue? So the question goes, I'd like to know from your perspective what you see as the real issue with our division. Is it turnover, burnout, etc.? So I think that our primary problems all stem back to resource issues. I was in the department between 2006 and 2010 and was around for a lot of the cuts that we suffered during the Great Recession. I know the kind of work that we were doing back then. I know that we had a lot more staff than we have now. And as a result of the budget cuts that occurred during those years, we had the capabilities of our agency cut severely. And I've tried to explain to policymakers, the legislators, the governor's office, that this work is work that requires people to do it. And that if we're going to do it well, it has to be done in a careful way, it has to be done in a thoughtful way, and we have to spend time with the people that we serve. In particular, in child welfare, you have to spend a lot of time with families, achieving trust with them before they can actually make the changes that they need to make on behalf of their children. The same thing goes for our OFI staff. The people come in and talk with you. You have to collect the information that is needed in order to be able to enter that and make the eligibility decisions that you need to make. And to hurry through that is problematic. And if we don't have enough staff to see all of the people that are applying for these programs, then it ends up in time frames not being met. It ends up in us hurrying through work and making mistakes. So I want to say that, you know, the loss of funding is the primary problem that we've had. We also lost a lot of staff during that time period. People that had been with us for a long, long time decided to retire because things were getting so tough. We were at one point going with 4 furlough days per month, and that's about a 20% pay cut. And so that's very difficult. So people decided to retire. Other people left the agency to take better jobs, better paying jobs, which we all understand. And so what we're doing now, in my estimation, is really trying to rebuild as an agency in both child welfare and in OFI. So we are going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along, but I'm going to move on to the second question. This question is about the Title IV-E Child Welfare Training Program. It asks, when will the 4E education program be reactivated? This is a program that allows those who want to get either a bachelor's degree in social work or a master's degree in social work. If you're an employee with DFCS, you can sign up for the program and have the benefit of having that paid for through federal funds. And so we're restarting this. This was a program that we had previously. Right now, if you look at the leadership around the state of Georgia, many of the people that are in leadership positions actually were graduates of the 4E educational program. And so we have been working diligently to bring that back. The program will resume this fall with participation from 6 schools: Valdosta State, Georgia State University, Savannah State, University of Georgia, Albany State, and Dalton State. Now, we're continuing conversations with the other schools of social work in the state, and as time goes on, I would hope that they will be joining us as well, so that we have a school close enough to anyone in the division that wants to participate. We will start this off in a fairly conservative way in terms of number of slots that each school will be able to fill for MSW and BSWs, but we will be beginning that. The 4E website will be back up in early July, and there you can find how to apply. Education and Training will also send a notification and a link once it's back up. The interview of the candidates will occur following the screening of the applications that are received initially. And so if you have questions about this program, I want you to feel free to contact Denise Edwards. Here is her email address. It's l.denise.edwards@dhs.ga.gov. l.denise.edwards@dhs.ga.gov. The commitment that is required from employees in return for having their education paid for is that you have to commit to spending a year for every year that we pay for. That is a great program. I highly encourage you to consider it. And over time, hopefully we can serve as many people as want to participate in that. But I can predict that there is going to be a lot of competition for this in the initial stages. So go ahead and be in contact with Denise Edwards, and she can get you the information that she needs in order that you need in order to be able to apply. Number 3 question is about workforce development. This person says, I would like to see more professional development offered for administration. I believe firmly that investing in our workforce is one of the most important things that we can do. As a matter of fact, it's one of the 3 pillars of the Blueprint for Change. It's pillar number 2, robust workforce development. We are taking a look at hiring practices right now. It's very important that we hire the right people to come in the door. It's also important that we retain the best employees that we have. In my estimation, a good training program has the potential to cause people to want to stay at the job. In jobs where I've had the capability to be trained on a regular basis to expand my skills, I've been a lot more satisfied in those jobs. So we want to put as much training out as possible for both OFI and for child welfare so that you can get that. And that includes people in administrative positions so you can improve your skill sets as well. Lee Bigger, who many of you know, was recently appointed as the Assistant Director of Knowledge Management as the first step in coordinating the sections of state office that offer learning to staff and partners. I know that in OFI, we had for a long time depended on training that was done via the internet, and that worked for a time. However, we do believe that much of that training needs to be in person, and so we're going to be moving back to a training model in RDR that allows for OFI staff to be in classroom with people who can provide over-the-shoulder support as they're learning their jobs and learning to improve their skills. If you have any ideas about the types of development opportunities you would like to see, please send them to me again at chatwiththedfcsdirector@dhs.ga.gov. Number 4, hiring in OFI. The question goes, in response to recent OFI communications about one case manager, one family, will more staff be hired for OFI? There's been a lot of focus on hiring more child welfare staff. Will the state hire more OFI workers to better serve the clients receiving benefits? We are currently working on a proposal, John Anderson and I, to submit to the governor's office that includes hiring more OFI staff. That will be for the next legislative session starting in January. I want to point out, though, it's very interesting that this question was asked, because I think we've talked a whole lot about the hiring of child welfare staff. We hired 278 staff this fiscal year for OFI. But interestingly, in January of 2014, we received money for the Affordable Care Act implementation. At that time, we added an additional 600 positions in OFI, many more than has recently been approved for child welfare. So the fact that we have talked more about child welfare, I think, has made it appear that there was an emphasis that was greater in child welfare than in OFI, when in fact the number of OFI positions that have been added are much greater than the child welfare positions. We also believe that in addition to bringing people on, again, it's about retaining staff. We can't hire people one day and send them out the door the next day. We have to keep people on the job, and that requires us to do a lot of things, including looking at the pay structure for OFI. John Anderson and I are beginning the discussions and about developing the proposal that will be a system of pay that will mirror that in child welfare. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We also have Deloitte working with us on the integrated eligibility system. As a part of that, they have done a staffing survey, and early indications are that they have found more staff will be needed to implement the integrated eligibility system, which is the system that will replace the current success system that is very old and many of you have been using for several years. So expect discussion around that, and expect us to be talking with you about the kind of proposals that we'll be taking to the General Assembly when they reconvene in January. The next is regarding pay increases. The question is twofold. So it starts out with staff are excited about the raises that are on the way. Many want to know what they can expect if their current role is not that of a social services case manager or supervisor. And the second part of that question is our staff has lots of questions about the potential raises. What kind of raises can be expected? What will all staff receive, and which staff will receive the additional increases, and when will those raises go into effect? The pay increases, unfortunately, are not equal for OFI and child welfare. The reason for this is that there was a very heavy emphasis on the part of the governor's office and the legislature in responding to the recommendations of the Child Welfare Reform Council. You'll recall that this is in relationship to a series of child deaths that were very tragic, and that really heightened the awareness of the need for retaining staff. The thing that we know is that we turn over about 35% of our staff on either side, in child welfare or OFI. So pay increases are a part of what we need to do in order to keep the quality talent that we have. We also have been through a time in OFI where we have threats of federal fiscal sanctions. I think there was a $76 million threat of having the state repay that money because we are not timely and we're not producing quality work. We also have a lawsuit currently called Melanie K that is also based on our untimeliness of food stamp determinations. And then we also have other cuts that have affected our work. This all detracts from my ability to successfully advocate on behalf of OFI for raises. So what I'm saying to you is that although I would like to have given you all equal raises, that just was not possible this year. And so we will be advocating in future years as we improve performance for all the raises that we need. And we recognize that there is a definite need for that in OFI. I am going to continue to work with John Anderson to advocate on these raises, but to also build a career path on the OFI side that will match the career path on the child welfare side, so that we not only get raises now, but that we build a system that will allow for raises based upon both performance and the acquiring of new knowledge, skills, and education. And that way you can move through a pay progression over a series of years, as opposed to having to wait for the 1%, 2%, 3% raises that all state employees get. I should say that here we are expecting all staff to receive a 1% raise. The 1% raise is conditioned upon a couple of things. First of all, you can have no disciplinary action within the last year, and you must have achieved successful performance on your performance rating. That would be a 3 or above. Effective July 1st, social services case managers and supervisors will be eligible to receive additional increases based upon that, plus years of service. So the raises will be 2.5% for those who have completed at least 1 year in child welfare, 5% for those who have completed at least 3 years, and 7.5% for those who have reached 5 years or more. Those who have completed these milestones as of July 1st, 2015 would qualify for the associated increase. Now, there's an additional requirement around supervisors. Supervisors must have completed all of the performance ratings for the staff that report to them by close of business today in order to qualify. If not, the staff that report to them will get their raises regardless, and the supervisor will not. So you may want to look at your calendar if you've not completed all the PMFs that you need to, and make sure that you get those in before the end of the day. Moving on to the next question, it's regarding the practice model. It says, can you talk about the practice model and how it will differ from what we have now, like the safety response system? Very good question. The practice model is broader than a safety response system. Practice model is really looking at the entire mission and vision for the organization, but also how you approach families, how you do the work with them that we need to do in order to be able to affect changes that they need to make. It is about how we assess family dynamics, how we look at the strengths of families, and determine how we can use those to assure that children are safe, that they're healthy, and that they have the best opportunities possible. Practice model should be more than a safety model. The safety model will be included in the practice model, but it is not solely a safety model. Really, what this is designed to do is to allow people to make independent professional decisions. So the principles and values that we lay out for staff, for instance, that first and foremost, we must always protect children. Secondly, that we provide the services necessary to families to help them improve their parenting, to keep their child with them. Those things will help people be able to look at situations they encounter in their everyday work and make a decision. It is really our desire to allow the professionals that do the work, the social work in the division, to be able to make professional decisions that are independent of policy, because we know that policy cannot presuppose every situation that you'll encounter in your daily work. So we want to make sure that we are strengthening everyone's capability to make those kinds of decisions, and that we're providing the support from supervisors and managers and other leaders that will allow us to really become the kind of agency that we want to. And I think everybody's heard me say, I want us to be the best family and children's services agency in the world. The way that we get there is adopting a practice model. It's by hiring the best people we can find. It's by assuring that we retain them and that we train them to the very best skill level that we can. The draft of vision, mission, and principles has been developed, and that draft has been shared with many of you and will be circulated to all staff over the next 60 days. There will be a link given to you to give feedback, and I encourage you to take that opportunity to participate in this brief survey and share with me what you want in the organization. So what principles, what kind of values do you want to see underpinning the work that we do with families and children? I look forward to receiving that feedback from you and incorporating it into the model and the final format that we will use guiding our work going forward. The next question is regarding contracts and service authorizations. The question is, will we ever have contracts and service authorization processes in place that smoothly transition from one fiscal year to another? Currently, we're in the process of providers questioning whether they should discharge our children and families until we can issue service authorizations for July. As of today, June 24th, we have no way to issue service authorizations beyond June 30th. We also had social workers making June visits who couldn't plan or prepare for July services because they didn't know what the status of the FY16 contracts were until the end of last week. Will this ever get better? So first, I want to take you back to when I was within the division back in the 2006 to 2010 timeframe. At one point, I was the Family Services Director for the agency, and in that role, I was in charge of policy and programs. Some of those programs were ones that developed many contracts that had to go out across the state. What we had at that point in time was a system that was entirely broken. We, regardless how early we started submitting the requests for the contracts, inevitably what would happen every year is that we would be 3 to 6 months into the new fiscal year before we got those contracts. I have to tell you that coming back from working at the Department of Early Care and Learning, I was a bit apprehensive about that. But much to my surprise, we had, the day I walked in, and that would have been June 16th of last year, I had a desk full of contracts. And my question was, are these contracts for the current fiscal year, or is this the one coming up? And I was very pleased to learn that we had those in advance of the upcoming fiscal year. This year, as of Wednesday, June 24th, DFCS has 76% of its July 1st contracts either fully executed or going through the signature process, and that includes signatures from vendors. This is the first time in DFCS history that we've been able to get this many completed, and I predict to you that we will have 100% by July 1st. And because of providers' cooperation and support of this, we have been able to do it. Now, it is also a process that is incumbent upon the provider to provide us with information timely so the contract can be developed. So if you have a provider that is complaining about that, is concerned about not having a contract for the upcoming year, tell them that in the future they need to be certain to return the information that we request of them as quickly as possible, as early as possible in the year, so we can get that done. The other thing that I want everyone to understand is that in state government, we have to work on the authorized budget that is developed by the state legislature and is signed by the governor. Although we begin trying to determine which contracts we want to go forward into the new fiscal year, by law, we cannot begin the development of the contracts or enter into a contract before the governor signs the budget. And so that is something that kind of defines the time period when we can begin these and when we get them executed. So the people in our contracts section at DHS are working in extremely compressed time frames, as well as those people that manage those contracts in-house. It also is a very tight time frame for providers to get us information back and to provide the contract for signatures. So it is a very involved process, but I want to say to you that I'm very pleased with the timeliness of the contracts. I'm sorry that the way the state budget and state law requires us to develop these, we can't do them earlier in the year. So we will try to do them as early as possible going forward and even improve on what we're doing now. But I have to tell you, this is light years beyond where we were in 2006 through 2010. And Carla Bird and her staff really deserve our thanks and congratulations on a job well done. I have a stack of contracts waiting on me to sign them, and I will do that before I leave today so that we can move, hopefully, the remaining 24% before the first day of July. The next question is question number 8. It refers to overtime. Our caseloads are very high at this time in all social services programs. Many staff have accrued a large amount of Fair Labor Standards Act overtime and are at the limit, yet they can't take the time off due to their cases and outstanding documentation. Is it possible to offer voluntary paid overtime this summer? We currently have plans to bring on an additional 175 caseworkers on July 1st. The vast majority of those have already been interviewed and are prepared to come to work on that day. Of course, that means that there will be a lag time in getting them on board and trained. They should be out of training and ready to assume caseloads within 3 months. It is unlikely that we will be able to provide overtime pay this year, but I will be following up with Jeff Lukich to get a better idea of each county's circumstances. Statewide, the average caseload is at around 21. We need to try to understand that what is occurring in counties where the caseloads are considerably high and try to ensure that we're allocating enough resources efficiently and effectively to handle that workload. I was very pleased to be able to offer the overtime pay, which is, I think, a first in the history of the division, at least for the child welfare staff. And I did that because I knew at that time that our caseloads were even higher than they are now. I also know and sympathize with those of you who have families and have to take time away from your family in order to do that additional work. Unfortunately, in doing this work for 27 years, I've learned that our work is typically not confined to an 8 to 5 day. It's just a matter of fact about the work that we do. What I want for us to have going forward is a fully staffed agency that allows us to have a work-life balance. That is very hard to achieve, but we can do it, and that takes staffing. So over time, my desire is to have you do less and less overtime, and that way you can have time to rest and relax and enjoy your friends and family as you should. The next question is on the SHINE system. The question is, with the new practice model, are we keeping SHINEs? If so, when will SHINE stop being counterintuitive and actually be a tool that will help staff? And will there be quality new worker SHINEs training? This work in SHINEs is ongoing. Over the last year, we have spent a tremendous amount of money as a state to improve the underlying infrastructure for SHINEs. For those of you who may not know, the Shine system is supported by about 200 servers. Those servers had never been replaced since Shines was instituted back in the 2007-2006 timeframe. And so we recently replaced those. I understand that it's still not as fast as we would like for it to be, but it is faster and it has been more reliable, and that is a good thing. We are looking at Shines, and we're looking to determine if the most responsible action is for us to continue to invest money in Shines, or are we better served by selecting a newer system that is the newest technology that also is much more user-friendly. And so the intention is that whether we do stay with Shines or we go with another system, whatever we have this time next year, my desire is for it to be much more user-friendly, much more intuitive. And I have to agree that in the demonstrations that I've been a part of, Shines is not the most intuitive system. And that's probably because this technology is going on 11 or 12 years old at this point. So we're either going to do a refresh of Shines and get better underlying technology, or we're going to something new. We'll be making that decision in the relatively near future, and we will keep you apprised of that. We're committed to having a system that supports our practice model. The practice model is going to guide our work, and I'm a firm believer that we cannot be doing workarounds in a system that was designed for another practice and do the best work possible. Lee Bigger will be evaluating Shines training as a part of his new role as Assistant Director for Knowledge Management. So I would think he's going to be doing some focus groups and other efforts to look at the training to see what we can do better, including providing over-the-shoulder support for new workers. The next question regards the restructuring of OFI and child welfare. It says, when we move the work back to the region level in OFI, will the caseloads be assigned based on tenure or on the programs the case manager has been trained in? For child welfare, what were the reasons for restructuring the regions in the state office? I'll take the second part of that first. For child welfare, a memo was forwarded to all child welfare staff earlier today that details the reasoning for the restructuring. In summary, the changes were made for 4 reasons. First, to coordinate state office sections and units that support the blueprint for change. Secondly, to increase operational effectiveness in field operations. Third, to create cohesion and consistency between regions and within districts. And fourth, to establish a structure in field operations that equalizes workloads and supports equal allocation and deployment of staff resources. For OFI, the move back to one family, one case manager is really the right thing to do for those people who receive economic services in this state. The largest number of complaints that we receive are related to the inability of a client to get answers about their case. Over and over, I'm told that they want to go back to being able to talk to someone at their local office about their case. I also hear from the case managers in OFI that they really signed on to be social workers who did social work in the office, where they got to know the clients on their caseload and were able to help people in their own communities. That is really what we want for you as well. So this is a good thing for both the case managers and also for the families. The caseloads in one family, one case manager will be assigned equitably based upon programmatic training. For example, a SNAP caseload will not be assigned to someone who has only been trained in family Medicaid. This really only stands to reason. Logic says that you assign these things to people who've had the training and have the skill set to do these. These restructures will not address all issues and are not going to solve all of our complaints, but it will get to the heart of what's important. and that's ensuring that we have structures that support safety of kids, to keep kids from harm, and to strengthen families through economic support. The next question is something that I have gotten on a daily basis for the last month or so. And I'm very clearly hearing from foster parents and from our staff that this is an issue that requires that we pay attention to it and resolve it. This is regarding CAPS and our foster parents. We requested reconsideration of a CAPS denial, and this is the question. We requested reconsideration of CAPS denial received in April. The foster dad is disabled, the foster mom works full-time. I submitted this request over a month ago and have not gotten a response. Please advise me on a better way to receive follow-ups from CAPS, and also if we can reconsider the policy around foster parents working from home or are disabled and unable to care for their children. The further comment here is that communication between CAPS and child welfare needs to be better. That there are renewals or items that need to be completed or continuing for continuing child care for a foster family, but the child welfare staff are not aware of what is needed. So here's my response. I wholeheartedly agree with you that changes are necessary. I've heard this again from foster parents and from staff throughout the state as I've been doing road shows. And truly, it's not a good reflection on the value that we place on our foster parents. I'm convening a work group to look at these issues that will consist of a CAPS case manager, someone from the Department of Early Care and Learning, a social services social worker, and someone from budget. Please send any bills over 30 days for foster parents to Gloria Washington. Gloria's email address is gloria.washington@dhs.ga.gov. Please send those to her and we will work on getting you resolution for each one of these things. The longer term fix for this is, I believe, a change in policy. The CAPS program, although we do the eligibility for the program, is actually controlled by the Department of Early Care and Learning. That was a change the governor made several years ago. So what we have to do is to work in conjunction with our partners at the Department of Early Care and Learning to talk about the issues around this, and this task force will be the beginning of that. I've already begun the conversation with our partners in the governor's office to let them know about the need, to help them understand the seriousness of the need for our foster parents, and to let them know that, in my estimation, this is one of the things that causes us to lose good foster parents. When we talk about supporting foster parents, this is one of the key things that we can do to support foster parents. Also, however, it is something that I think is the best thing for children. What we know from brain development science is that children that participate in high-quality early education programs do better in school. We also know that our foster children already are probably behind, and that if we don't have a good intervention for them, their trajectory in their life path and in their education is not a good one. So what we want to do is to get them into a good high-quality early education program to give them the best chance at a good education that we can give them. The governor fully believes in that premise, and I'm trying to use that at this point to convince them that it is the right thing to do. I'll continue that, and we'll provide you with updates on that as we can. All right, so that is the last question for today. Again, I have 15 others that I'm going to be answering personally via email, but I also want to urge you to continue to use the email address chat with the DFCS director at dhs.ga.gov. I will be having staff that will check that on a regular basis, and we will answer those between sessions of DFCS Discourse. So continue to submit your questions, your suggestions. We know that we don't have all the answers in state office. We know that our workers in the field have a lot of good ideas. And so we want to hear about those. We want to hear about your concerns so that we can be responsive to your needs so you can do your jobs in a better way, with the ultimate goal being that we be the best family and children's services agency in the world. We're coming up on the July 4th holiday. That's a time when we celebrate the birth of our nation. And I want to encourage all of you to fully enjoy that with friends and family, and to remember how much of a privilege it is to be American citizens, but also how much it is a privilege to be able to serve others in the jobs that we have in the Division of Family and Children's Services. It is important work. It's vital work for those that don't have what they need in our world. And again, I thank you for everything that you do in order to help provide those that don't have what they need with those things that will get them through life in a better way. Thank you very much and have a good day.